explanation number one. If you use the conventional definition, you're going to have a kind of easy time that you won't have with the correct, the better definition. Let me explain. With my definition, and the one that people like me use, the employer-employee relationship, you immediately, if you use that, you're going to have a problem. Why? Because this arrangement is very clearly and obviously undemocratic. It's worse. It's anti-democratic. Why? Because a tiny group of people make all the decisions for a large group of people. And the large group of people are excluded from those decisions. If you go to work in a capitalist enterprise, you don't control the executives. You don't control the board of directors. You don't vote on them. You don't put them in or out of office. You have no authority at all. In contrast, they have absolute authority over you. They can tell you on a Friday afternoon, don't come back here Monday. You don't have a job here anymore. They take your job, they take your income, they throw you out of your situation. You may have to leave the area, you lose your house, your kids lose their school. You understand the importance. These people have enormous power over you, and you have none over them. If you were to define capitalism as you ought to, with a definition that does the job definitions are supposed to do, you would be vulnerable to the critique that this system that you're defending is the antithesis of democracy. And you know something? They don't want to have to defend it. Much better to define it in terms of free enterprise, and hope you don't know that free enterprises existed in slavery, feudalism, and communism, and free markets too. All right? The second reason. If you understand the employer-employee relationship to be the key defining relationship of capitalism, you're going to have a thought that comes to your mind pretty quickly after that there's a certain arresting parallel, isn't there, between capitalism, feudalism, and slavery. It's easy to distinguish them because only capitalism has the employer-employee relationship. The other two don't. Capitalists pay their workers. The other two don't, etc. But you are going to notice something similar. In all of those systems, capitalism, feudalism, and slavery, there's a striking similarity despite their differences. In each of those systems, the key relationship between people, among people, in the production of the goods and services everybody depends on in all those systems, it's a dominant subordinate. Small group at the top, large group at the bottom. Small group has all the power, large group takes it all. The masters control the slaves. The lords control the serfs. And guess what? The capitalists control the working class. You've probably noticed that in your own life. And why is this a problem for the defenders of capitalism? It's a huge problem. And that's because of history. Capitalism comes into the world making a revolution. In this country, as I mentioned earlier, it revolts against slavery, and it presents itself as the system committed to freedom, liberty, equality, all of that. Capitalism in the other parts of the world, for example in France, comes about through the French Revolution back in 1789 that had on the banner of the revolutionaries liberty, equality, fraternity. In other words, capitalism wants to be associated with, and the leaders and revolutionaries like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin in this country wanted and believed in democracy, equality, and all of those things. They therefore do not want to defend a system that looks alarmingly like the very feudalism they thought they had broken from, that looks alarmingly like the slavery they thought they had broken from. that they wanted to break from. They confront the possibility that by having gotten rid of master-slave and having gotten rid of lord and serf and having replaced them with employer-employee, they may have betrayed the very big, wonderful objectives of liberty, equality, fraternity, and democracy that they had in their minds. I'm taking them at their word that they were sincere in wanting these wonderful, humane values. But then I have to conclude, and so would the defenders of capitalism if they understood the definition of employer-employee as key to understanding capitalism, they would have to admit that the promises made during the revolution that established capitalism have never been fulfilled. We don't have equality, fraternity, democracy, or liberty. We have a system in which a tiny group of people sitting at the top of the corporate ladders run this society, and that's because of the nature of the employer-employee relationship.